today I'm going to show you how to build the perfect whiskey collection for under $300. These are whiskeys I think are great value for money, giving you a great starter pack to start your whiskey collecting journey. So if you like this video at any point, give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and now that that's out of the way, let's jump in. Okay, so let's add the shopping list where you can see what it is in your currency. My total price, that $300 mark, is actually in US dollars, which is about $460 in NZ. These are the prices I'm paying for these whiskies in New Zealand, but I think since I'm on the other side of the world, for you guys in Europe or you guys in the US, you may even come under my budget for what you would pay for these whiskies. So the first one is what I like to call the daily drinker defensive dram. So what I mean by that, well, daily drinker, I don't actually recommend daily drinking. I think you should drink responsibly. Quality over quantity, people. When I say defensive, it's like a whiskey that you try instead of a more expensive one. Also, I want it to be probably the cheapest whiskey on this list. It needs to be something pretty available. So I got it down to two whiskies. The first one that was a great price was the Tomatin Legacy. And I know this is available all around. Here in NZ, it was only $67. It's very cheap and it's bottled at 43%. But this is not the whiskey I'm locking in. I'm actually locking in a different whiskey for the budget. So what I'll do is I'll talk about some other options, because I know some of these whiskeys in some countries you won't be able to get. So I'll give you some alternatives, but I'm going to lock in one whiskey per group. So the whiskey I want to lock in is the Maclean's Nose. This is a fantastic whiskey. This was, I think, also did well at the online Scotch Whisky Awards. What is it? Well, it's not actually a single malt. This is a blended malt. And you might think, oh, blended, that's not as good as a single malt because it's got blends in it. Yeah, that's not true. I can see where the stereotype comes from. There are a lot of like cheap blends out there that aren't great, but I think our perspective on blends is changing. That's because there's a lot of great blended whiskey coming out. But this one is actually from Adelphi, which make Ardnamurchan. They're an independent bottler. But this is a blend between Ardnamurchan and Glen Scotia. It's a fantastic dram and a great defensive whiskey, because this one is only 68 New Zealand dollars. For something that cheap. The finish is long. You've got nice maltiness. There's the light white fruits, nice vanilla. There's some like almost buttery notes. I think if you're going to start a collection, this should be on your list. So let's jump into the next one. I don't know about you, but I keep getting spam calls, spam emails, and spam text messages. So I went onto Google. I saw that some of my personal details were just a search away. This was super concerning, but it's very common. For example, the recent AT&T breach, 73 million customers' details were leaked on the dark web. Many websites will sell your data to brokers online who will make money off your personal information. So knowing if your data has been leaked and preventing it in future is a must. This is where Aura, today's sponsor, comes in. They are the digital shield that stops those pesky data brokers and helps cut down on spam. But what if there's another breach of your details? Well, Aura's got your back. With all-round protection, it's all in one place, so you don't have to juggle apps or worry. This means you can have peace of mind and spend more time just enjoying drams rather than worrying about data leaks. So if you care about your data online, head to aura.com/firstfillwhiskey to start your 2-week free trial, and the link's also in the description. And let's keep our personal details as exclusive as our whiskey tastings with our friends. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this video. So for this next whiskey, I want to choose something that's more spirit forward, mainly aged in ex-bourbon casks. I've actually done a video on 15 essential whiskeys. If you want to look at how to build like kind of a more extensive whiskey collection, go check this out. This is more a collection on a budget, but I'm going to group it in a similar way. When I think about whiskey in different categories, I normally do it by flavor, and the three big flavor profiles for me with Scotch, and I normally find people lean one of these three ways, are the ex-bourbon cask whiskies, the ex-sherry cask whiskies, and the smoky whiskies. And actually that's how I've actually grouped my shelf behind us, mainly smoky whiskies, mainly ex-bourbon cask whiskies, and mainly sherry whiskies. It's a bit shuffled at the moment because I was doing some B-roll shots before, but that's generally the principle I like to follow when I'm thinking about whiskey. So what whiskey did I pick for the ex-bourbon cask spirit forward whiskey? Well, I have a short list as well because, I mean, depends on availability and stuff. So if you can't get the one I pick, you might be able to go for one of these others. The Glencadam 10, the Deanston 12, and the Kilkerran 12. I think those are all going to be great picks. I think I'd probably go for the Kilkerran 12, but I do know it can be a bit hit and miss about depending on where you are in the world if you can find it. Also, I think the Deanston 12 has gone up a little bit in price where I am. The Glencairn 10 I just talk about all the time. So I'm actually going to go for the cheapest that I can get here in New Zealand. And this is a famous one, and you probably know why. It's like the Max Verstappen of good value whiskies. It is the Arran 10. I think it probably has some sherry cask influence, but overall this is a very like white, fruity, tropical kind of forward whiskey. 46% unchill filtered, natural color. One thing I would say is there actually is a whiskey I would probably put in here over this because I was getting it for even better prices than you could get this. And it was the Glenlivet licensed dram or the Glenlivet illicit still. Unfortunately, I haven't seen an update from this kind of limited release from Glenlivet. I really hope they start releasing this again because we had 48% unchill filtered whiskey coming from Glenlivet as a standard release, and it was so good. It was so good. And I talked about it a lot. So Glenlivet, if you're watching this video, release this again. We want more of this. This is fantastic stuff. This is a lot of people's absolute favorite type of whiskey. It is the sherry cask whiskey. This is going to give you your classic sherry cask flavors like nutty, dried fruits, and spice notes, and an essential for your whiskey collection on a budget. The problem with sherry casks is that sherry casks are generally more expensive for distilleries to buy than an ex-bourbon cask. So that means that sherry cask whiskies will demand a higher price. So a lot of the whiskies I was looking at were kind of a little bit too expensive, but I did get down to two whiskies that I think are fantastic that would work in your whiskey collection. The first was the Bunnahabhain 12. So a lot of you already know the Bunnahabhain 12. It's from Islay, but it's not smoky and it's not peaty. This is unchill filter, natural color, 46% all on the bottle, which is fantastic. And a lot of people assume this is peaty, probably because it has this like coastal note, which people associate with peat. Like a lot of peated whiskies have that sort of coastal salty note. And this has a little bit of that, but this is not peaty and this is not smoky. This is mainly sherry cask forward. But this is not the whiskey I'm going to lock in for my budget, for my shopping list. I'm actually going to lock in this one, the Tamdhu 12. Now, I think this is the only whiskey on this list that's bottled at 43%, but like the Ben Romick, this is one of those whiskies that I still love at 43%. And what I really like is if you really want to try the full flavor of a Speyside, the full flavor of sherry cask, this is a great road to go down. The other thing about this, as opposed to say the Bunnahabhain and a lot of sherry cask whiskies, is they're not kind of solely in sherry cask whiskies, where Tamdhu is solely aged in sherry cask. This one came in at $95, which is only 45 pounds or around $57 US, but I assume you guys could probably even get it cheaper in your own country. That's what I'm locking in. So this next category of whiskey is all about having something in your collection that's smoky or peaty. And this is a big category of Scotch. In fact, a lot of people like in the US assume all Scotch is smoky. I think it comes from the stereotype from some of the big famous distilleries like Laphroaig, Ardbeg, Lagavulin. But in fact, as we've just talked about, all the whiskies so far are not peated. They're not smoky. But these whiskies are. And I've done deep dives on what is peat and stuff. Most of the really famous peated whiskies come from the Isle of Islay. So one of the short lists for this, if you can't get my pick, is actually a whiskey you probably already know because I really like it and I talk about it a lot. And it was my whiskey of the year for 2023. It is Kilchoman Snag. Fantastic whiskey. But not only is this one smoky, it brings in some of the sherry cask influence too. But this is not the whiskey I'm going to lock in. I'm going to go for something I can get for even cheaper. So this one here was $104 in New Zealand, but I can get something for cheaper than that for $93. Which is around 56 US dollars. And that is going to be not from Islay. It is going to be the Lechaig 10, 46% unchill filter, natural color. This is a great smoky whiskey, but I'm actually not going to lock in this one. There's one I can get for the same price, which I'm enjoying more. And I think if you want something a little bit different from all the other whiskeys so far, so this is predominantly aged in ex-bourbon casks, but what if we, let's add a little bit of spice to your whiskey collection. We've already had ex-bourbon casks. We've already had sherry casks. Let's go something a little bit left field. So I'm going to introduce this one here, the Lechaig Sinclair series, and this is aged in a Spanish Rioja cask. So that's a red wine, and this is going to not only be smoky, but add some of those red fruit, kind of more chocolatey notes, and you know, the things you'd get from a Rioja. It's good value and I really like it. All right, let's turn it up a notch. Things are about to get very exciting because the next whiskey I think should be in your collection, if you've got a budget of only $300, will be a Cask Strength whiskey. This is when we turn it up. Look, all the bottles so far have been around 43% to 46%, but this turns it up. These are Cask Strength whiskies. The ABV is a lot higher, normally kind of like 55% and above. I've got two on my short list. One is the Aaron Sherry cask. This is fantastic. It's very cheap. It's only $113 here. But we've already picked an Aaron for this list. I want to go for something different. The next one on my short list will be an Ardnamurchan and Cask Strength. This is the rising star in Scotch whisky at the moment. It has a tiny little bit of peat in it. This one comes in at 58.7%. And in New Zealand, I can get this for a great price. In fact, the cheapest on this list for only $110. But that's not the whiskey I'm locking in because I'm actually seeing with the whiskies I've chosen, maybe I'm being a little bit too frugal, but I'm coming in under budget. So I'm going to go for a Cask Strength whiskey that's a little bit more, that's got an age statement. Really interesting whiskey to watch at the moment. And it's because it's made by a really famous person in the whiskey industry, Billy Walker. I won't go into depth about him, but when you get into whiskey, you'll learn about this guy. And the whiskey I picked was the Glenallachie 10 Cask Strength. So if you pick up this bottle today, they have released a new design, so it probably won't look like this. People often call this the Flintstones font. So I'm excited about the new designs. This one comes in at 58.1%. So this is a punchy dram. It's also what I like to call a sherry bomb. I actually did a video on sherry bombs. I couldn't actually get hold of this at the time. I do seem to be able to get hold of it now. There seems to be a few more bottles of this around. What's really cool is that it's also got an age statement. And when you release a whiskey at Cask Strength, you know, you're losing money because you're not adding water to the bottle, but also with the angel share, every year, part of the whiskey is going to be evaporating, right? Part of the alcoholic content. When you have an age statement, you're saying this is guaranteed to be a 10-year-old. So you don't have 3-year-old whiskey in here or 6-year-old whiskey. It's either 10 years old or it's above, which again can be very expensive for a distillery because you're releasing a whiskey that's not had water added to and it's had 10 years worth of angel share taken out of it. I just think it's cool when I see Cask Strength whiskies with age statements on them that come in at great prices. But I'm keen to hear which whiskies you would have in your whiskey collection. Leave a comment down below. Thanks to my patrons for making this video possible. And above all, make sure you share and enjoy beauty.